is me anchored out. My tiny little setup, all by myself. And there's not been another boat all night. It's kind of weird for how small of a boat I am, but it's pretty cool. We have ended up in a society where talking about climate change can be a really tough subject, no matter what side of the spectrum you are on, whether you're an absolute believer and advocate, or you're a skeptic, or you just don't know and don't care. We need to talk more about it, and that is the only way that we're going to continue to move forward in the discussion on acting on climate change, because it is the greatest crisis that our country and our world faces. And so what are some ways that we can help move that conversation forward? It's by talking about it. And so if we're able to utilize storytelling as a way to help progress that conversation forward, just so that we are starting to think about it more, then maybe that's something that this project can help too. The Atlantic Intracoastal Waterway. Stretching over 1,000 miles from Miami, Florida to Norfolk, Virginia, it is one of America's oldest connected waterways of sounds, inlets, rivers, bays, canals, and locks. Nowadays, nearly 30% of United States residents, or 87 million people, live in a coastline county. With the increasing threat of climate change across the world, our coastal communities are on the front lines. That's why I'm setting out to learn a little bit about where we are as a society. How do we feel about climate change? What do we associate it with? And what are we going to do about it? We previously had installed the boom pole and star mount system for the boat. So then today, as you see behind me, we've got it all set up outside because we're going to be installing a system so that I can sleep on the cot tent that you see behind me here on the boat. Yes, so not only am I going to be trying to sleep in campgrounds, but I want to be able to try and sleep on the boat itself. Before leaving Miami, I got to sit down with Julieta Rodrigo from the Clio Institute to learn more about some of the communities here in South Florida.
As far as South Florida goes, we really need to tackle the lack of climate literacy. And that comes from a variety of different factors. It comes from our schools, it comes from our culture, and it comes from the fact that many of us don't have other people in our networks that are very active in the climate scene. So increasing climate literacy is the first step to unlocking a chain reaction of events. We cannot allow the climate crisis or the word itself be a detriment to the movement. If anything, the urgency of the climate crisis should compel us to solve this in a much more fast and effective way. Across the board, one of the things that everybody cares about is their health. And the topic of health is a way that we found is a great way to connect with people regardless of their backgrounds and their age and their income and their social status. The main takeaway that we want people to leave with is starting the conversation. And education can really be the key to unlock the change that we need.
All right, cast me off. Here we go, start us. Climb it. Kayak. One closer. Let's go sail the ICW. 1,300 some odd miles where this boat will come out of the water. Let's do it. Now I'm gonna take you along. One of the stories that I've heard twice now is that a big thing that they do out here is beach nourishment, which is when they bring in new sand to the beach to make sure to maintain it. Well, what I've heard over time this came from the dockmaster, is that the beach at low tide used to stretch out almost 100 yards. Now it's less than 100. On top of that, almost all the coral reefs right off the beach here are almost dead, which is super sad. And then on top of that, they then also rake the beach every morning, which they do that to get the trash as well as the sargassum, but I gotta believe that that has some negative environmental impacts as well. We're gonna be meeting with Eric Newgard, who is the environmental manager of Port Everglades. Super excited to be and talk with him. He is an avid diver, and so I'm sure we'll have things to relate to on that, but also has an interesting perspective working for Port Everglades and Broward County.
There's been substantial changes. I've been diving since the 1970s, and it's hard to describe the differences. It's just so significant. The corals used to be crisp, very colorful, expansive, and now they're very reduced in cover, and the colors are somewhat dampened by the algae that's covering a lot of them. It's just very significantly different. It wasn't that long ago that very few people were aware that we had coral reefs off of Broward County, and now I think that awareness is becoming more prevalent. And there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of opportunity to make the public aware of the resources we have and how in peril they are, the importance of them, and not just from a ecological perspective, but from an economic perspective as well, because they generate significant tourism dollars and other resources for the community. We're trying to implement a climate change resiliency program here at the port. I have no question that sea level's rising. I don't really want to get into the debate about how much is anthropogenically, how much of the sea level rise is contributed by anthropogenic causes. In the scientific community, there's people that say it's 100% anthropogenic, and there's the deniers that say the sea level's not even coming up. I don't want to debate why it's coming up. I just need to address the fact that it is coming up. If we can work with the people that deny and get them accept that it is coming up for whatever reason they want to accept, it allows us the opportunity to move forward with opportunities to make corrections and adapt for the future.
And we're clearing the bridge. We like clearing the bridge. I was talking to the dockmaster, and turns out I am one of the only sailboats to ever come into that marina, because that's a fixed bridge with a minimum clearance of 17 feet, and most sailboats don't fit that. Tonight I'm staying with Charles and the crew at the Palm Beach Sailing Club. They reached out to me and were super excited about the project and opened their doors to me, and that could not be more amazing. What I've just gone through is generally considered the least favorite part of the ICW for a lot of people, because it's just wall-to-wall mansions and yachts, and that's not very fun for us. So hopefully it'll start to open up a little bit more and get a little bit more saleable. Meet Captain John, a longtime Florida resident, Vietnam veteran, and lifelong diver. At 84 and a half, he still goes diving every single week and had just gotten off the boat that afternoon. That evening, we even ate some lionfish that they had brought back from that day's trip.
There hasn't been that much change in the reefs that I recall. Right off of Palm Beach, we have an outfall that was active back in those days. Raw sewage was being pumped out into the ocean. It was, about a mile offshore, and it's still there. That pipe is still there, and it's a dive site now. Where people go out and fish all around there. But back in them days, where I was active 24 hours a day, and there were a number of them up and down the coast. Every city seemed to have one. I feel that climate change is here, and it's going to be a bigger problem whether mankind fix it, I really doubt that. Whether they can stop it, that's a possibility. There is definitely climate change. We used to have pretty bitter winters down here in Florida back in the early days of 50s and 60s. And we barely have any cold weather at all, which is nice, but it's an indication that there's something changed.
We're heading over to a spoil island, which is part of the Greater Spoil Islands project of primitive islands for people to camp on, so we'll be doing a few of those. Today is going to be the easiest day so far. We're going a whopping half a mile because met some really awesome people on the island yesterday, and they offered up to house me for a night, let me tie up at their dock, get a shower maybe, all that great stuff, which is super exciting. Continuing part of this project of that Dock Angel magic, because we totally just met by chance. So today could possibly be one of the last days I'm on the water for a while, and that sucks. I might not be sailing a whole lot more coming forward is because of this coronavirus. With me trying to go and talk to people in communities, kind of breaking social distancing, and people are not super excited to go out and talk all the time. Postponing a project, and so I mean, this was something that we had kind of talked about for a while. We knew that the coronavirus was going to have a lot of impacts. I'm pulling the kayak out of the water, and that's because marinas are closing down to transients, and I cannot get in to resupply, shower, and I'm not doing my part of social distancing if I'm not reaching out and talking to people all the time. Well, team, this is kind of hard. This is the last time that I will be pedaling time and tide here for quite a while. Just undocked and heading over to the boat ramp to take it out of the water, take her out of the water, and that's hard. But it's been a good run, and let's all see each other on the next go around. Well, team, after over a year of being off the water, we're back. Climate Kayak Conversation is back on the water, and we are going to be trying to go the rest of the way up from where we started up to Norfolk, Virginia. We're starting out here in Titusville, Florida, and we've got 3 months to go, 800 miles, and one heck of an adventure. Leaving from Titusville, my next stop was New Smyrna Beach, Florida, a popular beach town with both a historic and modern feel, depending on what side of the bridge you were on. That is where I met John Turcott, a dockhand at the marina and a fifth-generation fisherman on Mosquito Lagoon. I'm 16 feet long, so. Yeah.
Just because I got a boat coming in here.
So I actually got into fly fishing, well, fishing in general, at a very early age, growing up right here on the lagoon. All you do, if you're not surfing, you're fishing. If you're not fishing, you're surfing. Is kind of a lifestyle around this area, I guess. In the last decade, they've changed dramatically. Science says that a lot of it has to do with, you know, of course, perhaps global warming in combination with runoff and issues upland that contribute, because everything runs downhill into our local waters, where right now we're having some serious algae blooms in the warmer months, and it's caused a rapid increase in the fact that our seagrasses aren't able to grow per se like a lawn, you know, and photosynthesize and everything, because the sunlight just can't penetrate through that thick algae to the bottom of our lagoon waters here. And of course, as we all know, the seagrasses are actually the cradle of the oceans. We say, or you know, science says, in the fact that, you know, it holds all the life and nutrients and everything that creates such a fabulous fishery that we once had. It happens when I'm guiding out on the water. That conversation comes up anyway all the time now, and I don't sway anybody towards or my customers into contributing perhaps or anything like that. I think they see it firsthand and they understand immediately what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from, because well, when I'm out there in areas, acreages that we're pulling over, because I'm using water only about that deep, where the grasses used to thrive, and it was magnificent actually, and gin clear water. So now when I'm over those same bodies of water, now it's kind of an off yellowish type color, greenish sometimes, and it's just all barren sand bottom. So, you know, and they understand immediately where I'm coming from. We do still see fish, of course, or I wouldn't be doing it anymore, but the numbers are way down, and if we can't figure out what's going on and bring it back to the state that it was in, I think we're going to lose this world-class fishery that we once had.
Great, bye. Bye. Much better this time. Well, I think that takes the cake for the largest piece of trash for the day. Probably blew off someone's dock or someone's boat, and it's just been floating down the ICW for who knows how long. I also find it kind of hilarious, but also kind of sad that, like, I think this is a manatee, inflatable, and yet the now plastic manatee is the one that is now polluting the actual manatee's environment. It's a little sad. water is boiling. Yeah, it's super slick. I got a bow line.
Hang on here.
You at least got me.
I got you at least. That's right. Hang on here.
We're about to leave Darien, Georgia and head down to Sapelo Island, which is part of the Sea Island chain here in Georgia and along the southeast coast. It's a fairly long series of undeveloped islands, previously with Gullah Geechee communities, still with Gullah Geechee communities on them now. And yeah, we're gonna go down there, hang out with some friends, and explore a little bit. But it's been pretty fun here. The current is wicked, so it's very good that we're going with the outgoing tide, and the wind is in our favor, so we should be flying along here. But it's also a little chilly. It's like 60 right now. This is an amazingly cool barrier island here in Georgia that right now I'm actually walking on a old shell midden, a bunch of old oyster shells, but we're just biking around this island that is almost completely untouched for decades. There's a small research facility out here as well as a remaining Gullah Geechee community, but just look at this. This is absolutely gorgeous. So it's really hard for me to kind of show what it's like living on my tiny little boat here. So let's see if this works. This is me anchored out. My tiny little setup. All by myself. And there's not been another boat all night. It's kind of weird for how small of a boat I am. But it's pretty cool. Can't really beat this view either. It's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. Before crossing the border into South Carolina, I wanted to make sure I stopped in Savannah, Georgia. And here I got to meet with Nigel Law, who's the owner and operator at Savannah Canoe and Kayak, to talk a little bit about ecotourism and just exploring the outdoors.
So yeah, my name's Nigel Law. I run Savannah Canoe and Kayak with my wife, Kristen. We've been in business for coming up for 20 years. We've lived in Savannah for just over 20 years. Well, I do think there's a concerted effort to educate people more about where they live and about and the people who come here, because obviously Savannah's a big tourist destination, so we got a lot of people who come here and they don't really know anything about what they're getting into, and so it's nice to be involved in a drive to do that, you know, tell people about what it is that they are coming to, what makes it special. So there is definitely seems to be a drive to do that here, more so, I would say. The physical change, the geographical change is, you know, it's a constant ongoing thing. The Georgia coast is very fluid, constant flux and flow of sands and sediment, and so yeah, it changes every time you go out. There's a change, and I would say that change over the 20 years I've been here, it seems to be quite quick. You know, I definitely think that it's a fast or a faster change possibly taking place that we see now on the Georgia coast to what it was. But you know, it's a difficult place to quantify like the extent of the impact of something like rising sea level, because you know the land here just slides into the ocean. It just slowly slides off into the ocean. There's no definite point between sea and land. Well, you just got to state the facts and point out the features, I guess, you know, and people will go away and figure out, oh yeah, that's real. You know, there's definitely some impact happening here and now, and there is impact happening here and now. You know, and what we choose to do about that, I guess that's all on us. But I think it's important for people to know that, like, it's not something that's going to be happening in another part of the world. You know, in another time. You know, do we stick our head in the sand and pretend that everything's all right, or do we say, you know, shit's going to get real in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? You know? If you talk to everyone like they live here, then it gives them a certain ownership, you know, of that environment that they're paddling through. So that, I think, is an important aspect of taking those people out, you know.
After saying goodbye to my friends on Tybee Island and in Savannah, I hopped right across the border and into South Carolina, and my first stop was Daufuskie Island, where I got to meet up with Roger Pickney, who is a local author and longtime resident of the island, and he sure has some stories.
Roger Pickney on Daufuskie Island, South Carolina, sitting down at the county dock on the Intracoastal Waterway. I've been living here about 25 years, and I've been here off and on most of my life. My daddy was a dock builder, and he actually strung the power line to Daufuskie, so we got electricity in 1956. And they had a big party when they turned the lights on. Everybody could watch I Love Lucy on WSAV Savannah, and black and white, of course. You could take me and drop me down most any place in Beaufort County these days, and I wouldn't have a faintest clue where I was. But I know where I am on Daufuskie because a lot of it looks just like it did when I was a child, 50 years ago. You know, I think the notion that the climate change is all due to human activity is false. I think it could be aggravated by human activity. It could be mitigated by human activity if we so choose to do so. But the Earth is warming up, and it's been warming up for 10,000 years, and it will continue to warm up. It'd be warming up if there were no people here at all, because that's just what it's doing right now. And I mean, so many things about the environment in like my world are better. We never saw manatees when I was a kid. I saw one bald eagle the whole time I was growing up, and now I see them every day. The fish we have, the fishing is better in the waters around Daufuskie than it's ever been in my lifetime. The shrimping is good. I mean, the shrimp industry is suffering because they're competing with Chinese imports, but there are plenty of shrimp out there. Well, it's a gift that I want to leave to my grandchildren, and I'm been elected to public office here, and I'm trying to keep growth controlled and sustainable and common sense.
Howdy. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So we're just going through our first lock. That's pretty cool. Today sucked. Like, really bad. However, to the gracious, kind people, family of Traveler, the sailboat up behind me here, I'm safe. There was a part of me that didn't think I would make it today. Like, I had tried to throw out my anchor didn't hold. I tied up to a moored boat, that was not great, and they came by and saved me. So thank you, family of Traveler, here in Beaufort. I'm thankful that I'm tied up right now. But it was a hard day. There was a moment of the day where I wanted to give up. A serious moment where I wanted to give up today. I'm not going to. But I thought about it. I cursed. It was bad. I was in a really bad headspace. But, you know, it's not always going to be smooth sailing. Things happen, things break. So, now that I'm here, tied up, I can spend the time to repair, and if there's anything that I need, I'm gonna do it. Okay, good morning. Today is going to be repair day because we're gonna take our Mirage Drive that broke yesterday and we're gonna fix it. But our two new fins are gonna go in. They're not the same size as the turbo fins, but they're better than nothing and they're brand new. So, I'll take it. That's for sure. And with that, we now have a new paddle system. And yeah, that feels really good to be done. I mean, it only took us probably an hour and a half to do it, maybe an hour. After finishing my repairs, I went out towards downtown Beaufort and got to meet up with Chris from the Port Royal Sound Foundation to learn a little bit more about the local community.
So our organization was created to help people understand and appreciate what they see around them. We are talking with municipalities, trying to figure out how we can do things better, whether it's through stormwater education or through litter activities, and kind of trying to be a voice for the community in those settings.
But then when it comes to discussing when the actual term of climate change is brought up, how do you work in that conversation with all sorts of different stakeholders?
You're right, that is such a hot topic, right? You press that button and you're gonna get a reaction from somebody, right? You're not gonna get, oh, what's climate change? Somebody's gonna have a feeling towards it. What I really like to start out in a broader like view of it. I tell people oftentimes, climate change isn't, you know, an opinion, right? It's an undeniable fact, and it's not. We know that climate change has been happening for millions of years, right? We've had ice ages, right? They say that in South Carolina there's been 7 major climatic events that you can tell by looking at sand dunes that are found all throughout the state, right? So it's not that climate change isn't real, right? We know it's real. It is the rate at which that change is occurring, right? And we know that it is occurring exponentially at this point, mainly because of human impacts. Whether people want to realize that or not, that is their choice. But it is a real thing, and it impacts everything from the water that we drink to the food that we like to eat here, right? Well, this is a seafood industry, and having water temperatures change or having excess fresh water or excess salt water into certain parts of the area can have major effects as far as what's produced. So it is a tough subject to talk about.
Overall, we all want a brighter future. It just comes down to how. Everyday people want a better, brighter future for themselves and their families. But for a lot of people, they pose the question of at what cost? After leaving Beaufort, my next major stop was Charleston, South Carolina, and the halfway mark of this journey. Over 500 miles down, but still another 500 to go. So, I just had a totally random chance encounter with a local crabber that just like pulled his boat up alongside, and I didn't record it because the sound of the engine would have just been like way too loud. So he's been literally living on this creek since he was a kid, and the guy's in his 60s. When I mentioned I was talking to different communities about climate change, he's like, oh yeah, like we're in a major like drought right now, and that's a huge problem for the blue crabs because the blue crabs like a more brackish water than a full salt water, and so the salinity's higher. And like that's absolutely something about climate change because we're getting more extreme droughts and we're getting basically more intermittent storms. And so like that's totally something that is important to talk about. And the fact that he immediately jumped to that also gives me a little bit of hope because it also shows more and more that people here, they're seeing the effects. And people are willing to talk about it because it's their livelihoods. They want to protect these waters just as much as anyone else, if not more. Climate change is a huge issue for this town, and the entire Low Country. And so it's important to also tell the story of Charleston because it is one of the best case studies of what's going to happen to so many coastal communities. During one of my days in Charleston, I had the chance to meet up with local filmmaker and climate advocate Gray Gowder. He took me around Charleston to show me some of the challenges communities are facing and how the city is addressing those problems. Here, you can see us walking under Interstate 26, the main highway that leads into Charleston. The creation of this highway fragmented many of the communities here in North Charleston, and there was a push to create a series of connected green spaces and reclaimed wetlands called the Low Country Lowline. From their website, quote, "The Friends of the Low Country Lowline are working alongside the City of Charleston to create a green space that highlights the surrounding neighborhoods, addresses citywide flooding, and gives pedestrians and bicyclists a safe, dedicated path." Adjacent to that project is a proposal to update the city's mass transit with the Low Country Rapid Transit. This is described as, quote, "light rail on wheels." This would greatly increase affordability and accessibility for thousands who live and work in Charleston and the surrounding region. Lastly, we went down toward the end of the Charleston Peninsula, where the city is working to raise the seawall 18 inches to mitigate flooding. This is only a temporary solution, and there are disagreements between local, state, and federal agencies and organizations on how best to adapt to sea level rise long term. One leading concept, called Imagine the Wall, has come from a group of firms in Charleston and New York that focuses on nature-based design. This includes implementation of natural barriers that can respond and adapt to future situations such as restoring marshes and oyster beds. These are complicated problems with complex solutions, but that does not mean we should not address them. Well, good morning. We have a hitchhiker on board, and not the one that you're probably thinking of. Look at this. So that is a corn snake. Don't worry, they're not venomous. It's not a cottonmouth. It's not a copperhead, water moccasin, diamondback rattlesnake, none of that. It's just a common corn snake, which is in the rat snake family. And yeah, I found them in my backpack this morning. As well as, if you are kind of looking surroundings, I anchored out in the creek last night. So I'm like really scratching my head to figure out where this guy came from. Like, no idea. You can hear the osprey echoing through the forest. Swimming Bridges is sailing vessel time and tide. I'm clear. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great day. Caution, caution. South Bridge is now closing.
It's interesting. And this has stayed true throughout this entire trip, that every town you go to, or every region you go to, there are different concerns. For for different people. Which means that trying to get people to rally behind climate change is hard. But that doesn't mean that I haven't had anecdotal evidence. And wow, by and large, biggest threat from climate change to people here along the coast is flooding. Flooding, which just kind of makes sense, but like on a whole other level because of development. I have not heard more people talk about development, and I have not seen more development along waterways than I have here in South Carolina. It's insane. I mean, particularly between Georgetown and the North Carolina border. So basically the Myrtle Beach area. Before turning north up the Cape Fear River, I stopped in the town of Southport, North Carolina to resupply, as well as meet up with Dan George, a local environmental advocate and fisherman.
I originally got into fisheries management here in North Carolina. There was, there's some discrepancies going on between, it's an age-old argument really between recreational and commercial, and who's catching too many and whatnot, because we're suffering a little bit of depletion in our fisheries in this state. So I've always been a naturalist. I was raised that way, scientifically, and to understand what's around me. And through fishing all my life, I've noticed that literally everything ends and begins with water. Its movement, its where it's at, particularly its cleanliness, and so I became an environmentalist. I kind of pick that same approach if I'm speaking to somebody about climate change that is maybe a denier, whether it be for political reasons or whatever. I don't focus on and I tell them right off the bat. They say, well, we didn't cause that. It's a natural cycle. And I say, okay, well, let's go with that then. What are we going to do about it? We've caught ourselves in a natural cycle now, so what are we going to do about it? Let's not look at what caused it. Let's look at how to fix it, And if you talk to any sane person, and you say, pollution is bad, they will agree with you, because nobody can say, no, pollution is good. No, it's not. It's bad. And we do a lot of it. And so I think that's the way to have that conversation, rather than, don't focus on cause and effect, but more on solutions.
Got another big storm coming in, and it's a tropical system. Now, it's not a big one. It's probably going to be a tropical depression when we get here. This is currently it is Tropical Storm Claudette, which is coming actually up through the Gulf, not up through the East Coast. So this is an unusual track path for tropical systems, but it's the first one to hit the East Coast this year. And so we're going to head up to Sneads Ferry and hunker down for a little bit, because, we're still predicting 25, 30 mile an hour winds and larger seas and a lot of rain, so best do that off the water. And actually, I'm not going to be sleeping on the boat, because that probably would not be good for anyone, including especially myself. So we're going to get an Airbnb on the canal and do it safe, do it smart. It's another short day today, although that's gonna be fun to deal with. That's military exercises for Camp Lejeune that we're going right next to, and we're gonna be anchoring right outside to then make a pass tomorrow. But short day to go from Sneed's Ferry to an anchorage right outside Camp Lejeune, hang out there for the day, wind shift tomorrow, and then on up to Swansboro. I think this goes down as our wettest day on the water, total across the day. Might even been the heaviest downpour, I'm not sure. But it also goes, I think, for the longest. We're at 11 and a half hours since I pulled up the anchor this morning. I'd like to welcome you all to Beaufort, North Carolina, and here I'm going to be speaking with Tony Wolf, a sailing charter captain who has been all around the world.
I think probably, particularly as industrial as we are, we're probably one of the cleanest countries in the world, because I think we were at the forefront of really environmental issues. Rachel Carson in the 60s published Silent Springs, and that kind of set off the whole environmental movement. So it came here in the U.S. And we had issues back then for sure. I mean, the Cuyahoga River caught on fire. So, I mean, but compared to those days, it's unbelievable. Even the air quality is much better because of the stuff that they put into automobiles over the years. And I think all those things are obviously necessary, and the people wanted them. I mean, like we were talking earlier, people want a clean environment.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
And people were tired of it, and that's what drove the whole movement. And that was the big thing. When a river catches on fire, that kind of catches people's attention. We've got an issue here.
Yeah.
I think I'm a conservative, right? And I think what happens with a lot of conservatives is that because the liberals and liberal media pushes so many different agendas, when it comes to climate, conservatives just automatically shut it off because they don't agree with the other positions or a lot of their other positions. So even though they might be pro-environmentalist, they kind of take an offensive nature when it comes to hearing stuff that comes from like Greenpeace and some of these environmental groups. They just kind of shut up and they just react negatively, even though that's not probably how they really feel. But I don't think we have like an imminent danger of, I think most people around here feel that way too, that, yes, we probably are affecting the environment, we're affecting the climate to a certain extent. We don't know how much. Scientists don't even really know how much. It's unprecedented. We have no data in the past to really make any strong conclusions. It's all simulations. And if our simulations are right, well, so then we may have an issue. If they're wrong, then we don't have an issue. But I think people are kind of a little bit tired of hearing people cry wolf in my lifetime. I'm 68 years old. I've seen a lot of things change. I've seen a lot of, predictions that have come and gone, like over the last 30 years. In 10 years, we're going to be, some major crisis. It never happens. And people, like I said, they start thinking people are crying wolf. And so they don't take it as seriously as they maybe should have because they've heard so many false predictions that haven't come true.
Hey, good morning. We are here in Beaufort, North Carolina. Not Beaufort, that's South Carolina. But we are here in Beaufort, North Carolina. We're going to be heading up to Oriental, North Carolina today. And this is where our route is going to have a major shift. Because if you look at a map of North Carolina, there are kind of two different ways you can get through the state. You can either go east from here, past Capers Island, I believe it's Capers Island, and then out to Ocracoke, and then Hatteras, and then all the way up, you know, Rhoda, the Avon, all those places, all the way up the coast there. Or there's actually an inland route, which is actually the official Intracoastal Waterway, and that is going to be our route here for the next couple of weeks as we finish up our route. So we're going to be going from here up a canal to Oriental, and then from Oriental we're going to be going around a point up to a town called Belhaven, and then we're going to take a really long canal behind Lake Mattamuskeet up to the Alligator River, and Alligator River back towards my home on the Outer Banks. I'm pretty excited. It's going to be a lot of pedaling probably, but I'm excited. It's a part of the state I haven't seen before. I've seen Ocracoke, I've seen Hatteras. I can probably go back and vote it another time, but let's go ahead and get started on our morning here, finish some coffee, and go have an adventure. Well, it's gonna be a long day, but I knew that it was gonna be a long day from the start of this because, you know, the route itself is 30 nautical miles, so that's like, what, 1.5 for every 10, 3, 4.5, that's like 35 miles at least. Not to mention, it is a relatively northerly wind, which means that on the other side of the canal here, because we're currently going up a canal cut between the Pungo River and the Alligator River on the backside of Lake Mattamuskeet, that there's a pretty strong northerly wind right now. It's pushing water south, so we have a current against us. Now it's not super strong, thankfully. We're making good progress, but that's because the wind is picked up. I have a friend. Well, hi. Greetings from completely flat Albemarle Sound. There is no wind. Wait. There is a breath of air. Which is not what they predicted yesterday. That today's prediction from yesterday is actually now tomorrow's prediction. And today's prediction is nothing. And we've got 15 miles to go today. We've already done 3. Well, today just turned into a lot less fun day because we went from no wind to really cranking wind. Like we're pushing probably 15 miles an hour right now. and it's not in a good direction. I'm not happy about this. Because, yeah, this is not a fun situation. But we'll get through it. I'm not happy about it. I was hoping this was gonna be an easy day. That's what I get for thinking it was gonna be an easy day. I'm just trying to figure out where to point to right now so I don't end up, you know, way downwind of where I need to be. Which makes me think I just need to go upwind, which is, you know, not ideal, saying the wind is coming directly from where I need to go.
Oh, well, good morning. Oh my goodness. It was all fun and games until the wind picked up at like 3:30 this morning.
Yeah, that looks good now. Alright, so yeah. Not even 6:30, we're already mostly packed up. But, for how tired I am, I'm gonna be making some coffee. Not doing the full oatmeal. I don't feel like cleaning up that much. I really want some hot coffee this morning. So we're gonna do that. That is gonna make for a much better morning. I already tell. I'm tired. Ugh. Well, we're gonna be getting a really early start to the day here. Look at us go. Hopefully gonna be undocking here before 7 o'clock. North Landing Bridge, this is northbound sand and kayak. Time and tide, I'm clear. Thank you very much. Having something cold makes all the difference. Oh, here we are making the final preparations to leave the dock for the technically second to last time. Because we are going to leave the boat at Waterside Marina tonight and we'll get it out of the water tomorrow. But nonetheless, last full pack up. So we've got two major, I don't want to say hurdles, but like steps before we can get into Norfolk. First, we have the Great Bridge to get through, which that is one of the bridges that has a schedule and is every hour. So you want to make sure you time that one well. We are hopefully going to make at the 10 o'clock opening. It's currently 9:32, so we're making good time. And it's literally just around the corner here. And then we have to go then through the Great Bridge Lock, which is very exciting. We talked about that yesterday, I think. But we're gonna be going through that. That opens on, you know, as needed, but I assume it probably goes with the bridge opening. So I'm looking forward to going through a big lock, which will be cool. And then we'll get back on our way. High tide's at noon. Should be able to ride the outgoing tide all the way up towards downtown Norfolk. Great Bridge Lock, Great Bridge Lock. This is northbound sailing kayak, time and tide.
River's Lock.
Good morning, Lock. I would like to come through on your next opening, please.
Roger, just ease it this way. Once the gates are up, we'll cut a green light on, proceed in, take it over on your port side, need a bow line, stern line, there's cleats on the side for you to tie up to.
Copy that, thank you. I think that I'm about to get this entire lock to myself. And now we wait. If I've learned anything over the last, you know, 2, almost 3 years and over 3 months on the water now, it's that we're not as divided as I think we are.
It just brings you so much closer to, you know, the fact that we really do belong to this blue star, you know, rather than it belongs to us, absolutely.
Climate science has been in agreement for decades now. Our society is anything but.
When dealing with people that deny sea level rise is occurring, it's a challenge, but if you can find a way to communicate with them so they have an understanding that it is part of the natural process. You know, we have been underwater before. Water level has been much lower than it is now. It's come up over the last 20,000 years, about 400 some feet, and it's going to continue to come up. And to deny that puts the future at risk. If we can work with the people that deny and get them accept that it is coming up for whatever reason they want to accept, it allows us the opportunity to move forward with opportunities to make corrections and adapt for the future.
And it really comes down to just talking about it. Not informing, but discussing.
I think that there is a growing awareness in my community and what needs to be done, you know, that we can't just go with the status quo.
That what we need to do is do the hard thing of open up and be vulnerable.
But I think one of the major things that we all should be doing is reducing our footprint, right? Reducing the amount of trash that we produce, and then you can go into making impacts outside of that realm, right? Doing more than just taking care of yourself.
Because that's the hardest part, I think.
Well, there's, you know, a lot of young people are aware of the damage we've done to the planet, and that's good, you know, that something can be done about it. I don't know if it's too late. There's a lot of repair to be done.
It's the activation energy of starting the conversation is the hardest part. Once you're in it, I feel like people would be a lot easier talking about it. But people are so hesitant to, you know, just breach the topic. And I'm guilty of it as well.
Unfortunately, probably a disaster before people really, that's how we tend to react. We, particularly if it's something that's so sublime as climate. I mean, people don't really, they don't sense that there's an imminent danger. I mean, it's hot today, but you know, it was 3 weeks ago, it was 51 degrees here. People, I thought there was global warming, how come it's so cold? You know, I mean, you hear that all the time, right? Or it's been the coldest winter we've had.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Everything is connected to climate. At Clio, we talk about climate being a threat multiplier. So if you're worried about the economy, if you're worried about healthcare, if you're worried about immigration, if you're worried about your future in the capacity of being able to have access to food and being able to have access to water, climate touches upon issues that are important to all Americans. And once we establish that link and once we help people understand what that link is, people's eyes start to open and the possibilities are really endless.
We're like so close. We just need around one more mark. Oh, we're so close. I have like so many butterflies right now. We have fantastic wind on the last day here. Oh my god. What a freaking trip! What a trip. That's it. That's the ICW. We did it. That's it. Mark 36. We've done the whole East Coast ICW from Miami to Norfolk now.